Okay, all right, admin, good job. Okay, guys, so let's get started. It's 11:06. This is going to be our last training of the year. I know it's been kind of it's been a wild year to say the least, with everything going on with interest rates and then inflation, buyers, policy changes, and everything else going on. But I mean, we still have about just shy of 60 days, right? That we can still maybe not make the money that we need to make for the rest of this year, but we can at least begin the preparation for what Q1 will look like next year in 2023. Because the reality is this is going to be a challenging season for a lot of realtors, seasoned and brand new in this business. And it's even more important to, drive up your skill sets, um, get diligent about your disciplines, your daily activities that you do. I've fallen off a little bit over the last few weeks. I just recently moved. I'm expecting baby number two, so we are in preparation. My family and I were in preparation for all of that. So I've been out of it the last few weeks as well. So what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about some policies that are fairly new to the market that will definitely affect the way you do business, the way we do business, the way developers do business, um, and the way anybody is in the real estate profession does business. So let's get started. More money, more problems. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it means to me is, and the reason why I titled it that, I mean, I could have also titled it More Money, New Problems. Um, so essentially, what's happened over the last course of the last 2 years is the dreaded I word, inflation. And inflation is a very serious thing. It's probably the most dangerous thing for wealth creation that exists. And that's why it's such a big topic. I know everybody's sick and tired of it. And we kind of want to move on to help our clients, get into those new homes, and then also help ourselves obviously make more money, make commissions and so forth. But if inflation is the wealth eroder. So if you have $1 million today, right? And that money is losing 10 to 12% a year. That $1 million today could easily be valued at, $900,000 tomorrow if inflation keeps up at the pace and at the rate in which it's kept up. So that's why, for some of you that might be a little bit confused as to, because we've all kind of had enough of this by now, and we kind of want to just move on. It's a very real problem, and the policies will continue, especially with the instability, with what's going on in Europe, in Eastern Europe, and what's going on with in down south in the States as well. Midterm elections were this week, so all these events that happen around the world kind of have a direct effect as to how the Canadian government responds. So that's kind of the reason behind why it's going to be a popular theme going into next year, and you kind of need to know how you can get ahead of it. So for those of you that know or don't know, Ontario just passed a new aggressive bill for housing. Someone's background is on. If you can put yourself on mute. Um, so Ontario just, what does that sound? Are you guys hearing that sound as well? Hold on, give me a second. Sorry about that. So Ontario just passed a new bill, and this is a new aggressive housing bill. Over the last couple of decades, developers have been complaining a lot about the amount of red tape it takes to bring product to the market, bring doors to the market. A lot of you might know or might not know, for like a $400 application, you can pretty much block any development proposal in your community and in your area. And in some neighborhoods, people take that very, very seriously, and they do put in those applications to prevent new housing policies, new housing starts. So what Doug Ford recently did was he gave the Ontario government the power to overturn any municipality decision that prevents what the long-term goal is of bringing housing to the marketplace. So, for example, so this is in my neighborhood. When I first moved in, my first week of October, I walked around the neighborhood, and every lawn had this sign on it saying, Tridel, respect our neighborhood. Your proposal is inappropriate. Now, this is part of the major challenge of the reason why housing is such a challenge and why prices have gone up as aggressively as they have as well. And this is called NIMBY, which is not in my backyard. So you have a lot of individuals that, maybe they've been in neighborhoods for decades and they don't want to see the density increase in those neighborhoods. They don't want to see new housing. They don't want to have a 10-story condo in their backyard that could potentially block their sun access as well. So you have a lot of protests that happens. And like I said, for a $400 application, you can block and you can stall any development project in the city until a hearing is done. So a lot of people take advantage of that. And if you're a small or a mid-sized developer, the cost for every delay in the city, the cost of every delay is about $3 a square foot. So if you think about a project, let's say a condo project, that's 100,000 GFA, which is 100,000 square foot area to be able to build, and you have a $3 a month increase because of delay, $3 per square foot, that becomes very, very expensive. And then within 6 months, you're in the millions of dollars over budget already, simply because of these types of tactics. And these are really tactics that more affluent and more wealthy neighborhoods know and they use. I don't know if he's on the call. Is he on the call? No, he's not on the call. Ryan Ratos is building his house at the moment in partnership with Dream Development. And man, the amount of times the neighbors have called the city on him and the inspectors on him has just been unreal. So these are some of the challenges that we face here in Ontario to be able to get those housing, to hit those housing landmarks that the government wants to hit. Obviously, we know immigration is very, very big. Millions of people are waiting. Literally, millions of people are waiting at the border to be processed to become permanent residents in Canada, and these people are all going to need somewhere to live in the meantime as well. Any questions or comments on this before I move on? No?
Yeah, I have one question.
Sure.
Morning, everyone. Does this include the 50,000 homes being built on the Greenbelt?
No, so that's separate. That was more recent. And again, I haven't read the full policy, so I've just been relying on a couple of summaries. But the Greenbelt one is fairly new, fairly aggressive, and there's going to be obviously there's a lot of people pissed off about it because initially Doug Ford said they wouldn't touch the Greenbelt. But now, because of how far behind they are on their targets, he's doing an overhaul on that, which is kind of, it's kind of like pick your poison, because typically once a government starts something, it's never temporary, right? Kind of like double land transfer tax in Toronto, it was temporary, and we know it's not temporary because we still have it decades later. So a lot of people are scared about that in terms of what the Greenbelt, what the new Greenbelt restrictions, because I think Doug Ford has proposed about 70,000 acres he's going to take from the Greenbelt, which is a lot. And then, like, where do you stop from there? Like, if you have another 5 million people coming into the country over the next 10 years, you'll take another 70 to 100,000 acres, to be able to meet those housing starts. But this is not included as far as I know, but I do know that the Greenbelt conversation is something that was recently had in addition to this as well. But definitely do some reading on it and catch up on it if you're interested, because these are all things that will give you more tools and more power to be able to have high level conversations with your clients. They can understand that, hey, we have 2 million people waiting to be processed right now, and then we have more aggressive housing policies that are being introduced. Like housing, even though in the short term because of interest rates it looks bad, in the long term, you're going to do really, really well. Because again, the need for individuals to just want to come into Canada just grows and grows every single year.
Mike, I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about because I signed in a little late, did you guys talk about the Doug Ford ruling on adding up to 3 dwellings in Toronto homes?
And that's where we are right now.
Okay, perfect.
Right on time. So again, read up on it to be able to learn a little bit more as to what this means. And obviously, I don't have all the gists as to what neighborhoods these are applicable to. I don't know if municipalities can opt in or to opt out of this, but you definitely are gonna get a lot of pushback in certain neighborhoods. You're gonna get a lot of pushback, and we know politics. Politics is politics is probably one of the worst games that you can play, because it's so ruthless, and everybody is fighting for re-election every 2 to 3 to 4 years. So they're going to make any promise that they can to keep their constituents happy, right? So what Chris is talking about is this is one of the new rulings that Doug Ford introduced. So you can have, for example, if the rules pertain, you can have up to 3 dwellings on a lot. So you can have your main residence, you can have a basement apartment, which we all know of, but then you can have a 3rd dwelling in the back as well. So you can, as you can see from this illustration, so if you're somebody who's building, and if you're somebody who is servicing clients that are looking for cash flow, one of the challenging things in our market, and it's always been a challenging thing in our market, is individuals that want to buy real estate using cash flow analysis. Because if you do a cash flow analysis, usually, the average home is 1.1 million. If you put in even 20% down, and then the average rent, let's call it 3,500, that's not enough to cover, the principal, the principal and interest, the property taxes, the maintenance, the upkeep of the property, the insurance, and so forth. So most of the time, what has always made Toronto a very special market is not necessarily, and I always have this debate with investors, is not necessarily chasing cash flow immediately, because we know rents always go up over time. I remember my first investment property when I bought it on, King Street in Dufferin. I was charging $1,100 a month for a 1-bedroom. So there was no cash flow that was coming in. Even 10, 15 years ago, properties weren't cash flowing. But what I always tell investors is over time, properties will cash flow because rents will go up over time. What's always made this market very special is, especially when you're buying pre-construction, like in the US, you can't buy pre-construction. Well, I'm not sure if that statement is true for the entire country, but I know in a lot of states, you can't buy pre-construction because of the risk associated with it. So builders have to build it and then sell it. Whereas here, you can participate as a partner with the developers, and then by the time it's built, you can have equity realized. Not so much true today for a lot of projects, but there are projects that still give you that opportunity. Asha, did you have a question?
Yeah, I sent it to you in the chat. I was just wondering, is there a minimum lot size requirement for this?
Again, I will just encourage you to do your own reading. But from what I can see, for you to be able to build 3 structures like this, you definitely need at least a 150 depth. But again, I don't know what powers or how much of the powers are given to municipalities. What I did read in the article that I read is Doug Ford is allowing he's given targets to each municipality. So Peel, these are your targets of how much new housing you need to bring. North York, these are your targets. Vaughan, these are your targets. So if those targets, I guess, are not being met, and I don't know how they're going to measure it, but if those targets are not being met, I'm guessing that's when the Ford government will step in and overstep if they need to because again, there's going to be a lot of pushback, and there's going to be a lot of neighborhoods that are going to fight against this essentially. Chris, did you have anything you want to add or comment on? No? Chris is good. Actually, Chris is off.
Sorry, just one sec.
No problem.
Continue.
No, I was asking, did you have something you want to add or a comment you wanted to make in regard to that point?
Honestly, I had it on low because I was walking through a busy room.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so let's move on then. Other mentions of the bill. Again, I don't have the full details, but I encourage you to do your reading. Is everybody familiar with what inclusionary zoning is? Have you guys heard that term recently from developers? No? Okay, so inclusionary zoning is, right now it's only available in Toronto. So what inclusionary zoning says is every new developer that wants to start a project in Toronto needs to allocate a certain amount of units or a certain percentage amount of units to affordable housing. So meaning that people with lower income, lower class, people, and again, it's not going to be because lower income in Toronto, and I've seen some of these policies that were, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, some of you guys have been here long enough, in 2017, 2018, there were some policies that the government had done in partnership with CMHC to make housing affordable, but the minimum income that you had to make to qualify was $75,000 a year. So which didn't make sense because it's like $75,000 a year is not a small amount of money, but again, it's, the government's trying a lot of things by trial and error. And this is, in my opinion, just one of those things at the moment. And we'll see if it works because it's going to deter a lot of people from going into Toronto. Because if you're spending, if I'm an end user and I'm spending $1,800 a square foot to buy, a condo downtown Toronto, but then my neighbor is in there for half the cost, well, then why would I want to be in that building? So there's going to be some challenges in there for developers to hit sales because of this inclusionary zoning. So that's why you'll see a lot of developers are running outside of Toronto, picking up land and looking at proposals outside of Toronto because they're trying to get away from this because this is going to eat away at a ton of margins. But one thing Doug Ford did do is if you do have inclusionary zoning units in your product mix, you will be exempt from development charges and parks and levies, which is huge because that's in Toronto, it's about $60,000 to $80,000 a door. So if you have 200 doors, do the math. That's a ton of money that they'll be getting in the form of a credit or a rebate or a kickback, which obviously we as the taxpayers that live in Toronto are going to be the ones paying for it. Another thing that they mentioned in the bill is conservation fees are going to be frozen. So every time that a developer wants to bring products to the market, there's a ton of consultants, engineers, committees that you got to go through. They're spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on these hearings, and one of those bodies is the Conservation Board. So what they've done is they've frozen that, which is amazing. Like I remember Jade Waterfront Condos. I think it's a project that we blew out back in 2012, and Jade is right on the south side of Lakeshore and the north side of Marine Parade Drive at Parkland and Lakeshore. So I remember the conversations around the conservation board, and developers weren't happy, the amount of money they had to put into it, the amount of time that they lost because there's revisions that probably that committee might want to see and so forth. So a lot of red tape essentially is the story of this bill, is the removal of a lot of that red tape. And they've also bumped up the foreign buyer tax to 25%, which I think it doesn't make too big of a deal here in Toronto. In markets maybe, yeah, I mean, this doesn't make too much of, because foreigners know how to overcome this foreign buyer tax. Because if I'm a foreigner, because I do have foreign buyers, I know a lot of you here probably have foreign buyers. If you're buying something pre-construction, yes, you have to put 35% down as a foreigner. But by the time you're closing, especially if you have kids that are international students, you know, by the time they do their 4 years undergrad, they can apply for permanent residency. You can do a name change, put the property in the kid's name, and you can close as a domestic buyer. So you can get back, you know, 15% back if you have to put 35%. You go to your lender and you say, hey, I live here, I'm a permanent resident. Like, your bank is not going to force you to close with 35% down. So, I mean, foreigners always find a way, and clever realtors always find a way to be able to structure these to kind of get away from that. But as it is, you know, it's politics. It looks good. You know, we're going to charge these foreigners that are buying real estate and making real estate expensive for all the domestic people that can't afford real estate. And that's really all I look at it and treat it as. Questions, comments on before we move away from the bill topic? No?
Nope, that feels good. Yeah.
Okay. So summary, who's going to benefit? I believe investors will benefit greatly from the bill, because then they're going to go looking at properties that, if they understand what the zoning is and what the use is and what they can turn it and flip it to. Maybe you make that garden house, as seen in this illustration, you know, maybe you make the garden house your short-term rental, you make the basement your long-term rental, and then the second level, the main residence, will be your primary residence. So now you have short-term income cash flow being generated here, and then you have long-term income being generated here. There's going to be so many creative ways that investors are gonna dive into to be able to maximize on this. And it's very important that if you do want to, and this is where, again, going into 2023 is going to be very important for a lot of people, is because these bills don't tell you what your opportunities are. Like these don't tell you what the opportunity zones are. So you have to kind of use your own creativity, your own knowledge, your own experience, and you know what your market is looking for. Like, what are your buyers and your sellers, like, what are they hungry for? You know, as you have these conversations with people, you know, maybe you want to become the expert in this area. I mean, when I started my business, one thing that I did a lot of was I started, even before I became licensed, I was doing a lot of assignment sales. I was just writing up agreements because I was myself and my network were buying quite a bit. So I wanted to understand what people were buying. So, and I wanted to do assignment sales because nobody was really doing assignment sales. It was kind of a weird and gray area. A lot of people thought it was illegal 10 years ago to be able to flip a contract without closing on it and to be able to make a profit. So these are all opportunities where all your brains should be turning on and saying, okay, where and how can I tap into this, make myself the expert on this area, so that way over the next so that way, once the market comes back and people are now getting familiar with this, I can come and I can say, hey, this is the experience, this is what I know, this is what I've done, and this is the value that I can bring in addition to, you know, just posting your listing on MLS. Conservation fees for, sorry, I already spoke about that. Another thing that I believe is, affluent neighborhoods will become more desirable. Because at the end of the day, it's a game of politics. It's a game of politics. So you're going to have some neighborhoods that I don't believe you're going to go to Rosedale and you're going to see 3 doors being built on one lot. Like I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening in Forest Hill. You know, I don't see it happening in you know, like really, really established neighborhoods like Bronte Village and Oakville. Like I don't see those type of things happening in these neighborhoods, because essentially what's going to happen is the Bramptonization of the GTA. Because if you allow every door that is a single family dwelling right now to become, like a multi-unit, a triplex, duplex dwelling, you're gonna have a lot of neighborhoods like people just don't want to see, go outside and see 10 cars parked in a driveway because there's short-term rentals, long-term rentals, and then another family of 4 living there. People really care about their lawns and what their lawns look like in certain neighborhoods, in keeping it that way. So I think that it's what these bill is going to promote, and I say the Bramptonization because Brampton, anything that has a duplex or a basement dwelling, a separate entrance, always sells faster than properties that don't. And you're starting to see this, it spill over in certain pockets in Mississauga, maybe North Oakville, North Kleinburg. You're starting to see, the appeal of that, and you're starting to see the growth of that happen a little bit more. But I think certain neighborhoods are going to maintain their prestige, and it's going to push the value of getting to those neighborhoods even more. More and more people with money are going to want to go into these neighborhoods that don't allow for these type of zonings and these types of policies to be brought forward. Okay, so inflation. More money, more problems. So essentially,
17.
sorry, does someone have a question?
What's that? My comfort too.
Oh, Senior, can you do me a favor and mute your line, please? Thank you. Okay, so more money, more problems. So essentially what's happened in the last couple of years is the federal government, in response to COVID, printed a ton of money, and now they're taking it back, and they're taking it back with higher interest. That's the simplest way to summarize the events of the last couple of years. Because if you look at what they say inflation, because right now there's also a debate, is it inflation, is it not inflation? What are the characteristics of inflation? Or are we going into not inflation, recession? Are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? And what are the characteristics of a recession? This is the first recession, because technically the US is in a recession. But this is the first recession that I've seen with such a strong labor market, with a labor market that has a lot of influence. So you have a lot of workers today that are opting to, they're not hungry to go get a job. Unemployment is not at, I remember around 08, 09, during that recessionary period, inflation was 8 to 12%. Sorry, unemployment was 8 to 12%. So that means 10 out of every 100 people didn't have a job. That's not the case in this market. Unemployment is about 4%. So the labor market still has a lot of power. So it's a weird type of recession that's happening at the moment. But in response to everything, I think the government is, they're trying to get a hold of they're trying to get their grapple on inflation at the moment, but they also know if they keep increasing interest rates, it's going to put us into a severe recession. And we're starting to see it now. It's starting to slowly happen. Facebook just laid off 11,000 workers, right? So these are now the characteristics of a recession that we're starting to see. We're seeing major employers, major tech companies laying off whole divisions. 11,000 workers is not a small amount of workers, and that's just one company. So if that's the trend that's going to trickle, and interest rates don't just affect consumers, it affects everybody. Businesses borrow money for working capital, for employees, for expansion. So this affects businesses and the ability for businesses to expand as well. If interest rates are 6%, 7%, businesses are going to think twice about, do we need to hire more people? Do we need to expand more stores? Do we need to expand our verticals and our horizontals across our lines of business? So if interest rate is deterring them to do that, and it's forced them to hold on to cash, and they're laying off people, the government is going to start responding accordingly with policies, which is what I believe we've hit right now. And that's why I've circled this, is because we've peaked and we've come down here. And also we need to see where we go from here on forward. So, this is where interest rate is. I mean, and this was updated October 1st. So obviously we've had an interest rate hike since October 1st, and we'll probably have another one next month as well. So until these two lines converge, expect rates to still climb. I've heard 6% is that magic number before the government says enough, but no one really knows, because everything that's going on in the world, all the uncertainty, we just kind of have to just, do what we can on our part and let the external things happen on their end, because there's nothing much that we can do because we don't write policies. We're here to sell real estate. We're here to get listings, convert those listings, and we're here to network, build leads, build relationships with potential buyers, and listen to them, listen to the opportunities, listen to their problems. Do they need to, are their families expanding? Are they worried about, are they worried about the rental market and where rents are going? I mean, rent is a byproduct of everything else going on. I mean, so if rent is up 30% year over year, some savvy buyer is going to say, you know what, I rather overpay today. Sorry, not overpay. I rather bite the bullet with the high interest rates, even though I'm not going to be cash flowing, to allow myself to at least protect against future rent increases. There's a lot of conversations and there's a lot of opportunities out here in the market. You just got to be able to go through the noise. And part of this training is to help, strengthen your skills and to be able to have conversations, because the holidays is going to be special. Everybody is going to, either everybody's going to be talking about real estate or nobody's going to be talking about real estate at all during the holidays, right? Either they're going to be having conversations at the dinner parties to say, I told you so, or they're going to or they're not going to have those conversations because maybe they just made a purchase, maybe 10 months ago. If you purchased something between, November last year to April this year, you probably are not feeling as confident about your purchase as you did while you were going through it, even though your rates are really, really low. I'm finding that people that have made purchases, even clients of mine, they're a little bit, buyer's remorse. But obviously you can't return a purchase of a house. You either have to put it back in the market or just cut, or take your losses and move on. So there's gonna be conversations had. So, during this holiday period with your family and friends. So this will allow you to, be able to have that conversation on deeper levels, because you're understanding not only the micro of what's going on in your neighborhood, but the macro of what's going on, in Ontario with the Bank of Canada, and also, how all these things are going to affect the decisions that people have to make. So my thoughts are, inflation has peaked. Housing is already corrected from the peak of this year, 20 to 30%. October 2022, the increase that was expected for interest rates was actually lower than people had anticipated. People were expecting the Bank of Canada to increase at 75 basis points to 100 basis points, but they only increased it by 50 basis points. Now, 50 basis points, depending on what your mortgage is, it's still a lot of money in terms of how much cash flow it takes away from your pocket, right? Which is probably, it's a good time to get some tenants out, right? So that's one thing I'll probably, if you have, and I'm not sure if you guys know this, if you have a new build that was occupied after November 15, 2018, there is no rent control. Let me say that again. If you have a new building that started occupancy from November 15, 2018, there is no rent control. So whatever tenants are there and their terms have expired, if they're on a 1-year lease, you could literally go there and you can increase those rents by whatever amount you want to. Obviously, it needs to be justifiable that the market will respond to it. But these are the conversations I've been having with my investor clients with these interest rate hikes. It's okay, well, this building here at whatever location, this tenant's been there since 2020. The last rent increase you did was $20 a month. Maybe it's time to increase it to $200 a month. Can you have that conversation with your tenants, see what their response is, yada, yada, yada. They're gonna fight it, obviously, but it is a legal increase. So these are some of the things that you should be doing, and conversations you should be having with existing clients, and conversations you could be having with individuals that are scared to get into the market. It's, hey, let's get in right now because the prices are so low. In 3 years or in 2 years, once rates are back down because a recession is inevitable now, we can refinance so that way our cost is lower, but B, we can also bump the rents by whatever amount the new market terms are. So these are, there's always opportunities in markets even like this for people to be able to take advantage and to capitalize on as well. The bad news is it's going to be painful, in terms of cash flow, in the short term. I mean, nobody wants to pay 6% interest rate, but also it's I don't feel sorry for anybody, even myself in some moments. And simply because, for the longest part, especially over the last 2 years, everybody kind of was operating with, drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking like this was not going to end. I mean, I remember I purchased a property September 2020, and I locked in my rate at 1.9% for 3 years. And I remember having conversations with people, and they were like, "Why would you do that? That's so high, 1.9% over 3 years. Rates are 0.005%, which, yes, it could be true, but being in this long enough, that 1.9, 2.9%, that's free money. That's no cost to borrowing. There's no real cost to borrowing that money at under 3%. So, people lived in La La Land for so long, drinking the Kool-Aid, thinking rates will never go up, or maybe wouldn't go up as aggressively as they have. And now these are the consequences of it. So we need to really, part of the next 6 to maybe 18 months is there's going to be a lot of opportunities navigating individuals who bought some really terrible products especially over the last 12 months. And those could be resale products, those could be pre-construction products. Some people bought some really, really terrible products. And I read an article a couple of days ago saying that appraisals are not even coming in on some of these new builds, which is it's not a foreign thing. It happens quite a bit. And I think it could happen at a scale that we've never seen before, where the banks, and I went through this, is Paul on the phone? No, Paul's not on the phone. I went through this with Paul. I had a client buy an assignment from him in the middle of the year, bought an assignment from his client in the middle of the year. We got pre-approved, they were pre-approved for about $700,000 in April. So we bought an assignment from Paul's client, and then our closing came up in September. And so my clients were pre-approved for $700,000. We bought the product for $650,000 because I gave ourselves a buffer because I said, okay, interest rates will go up. They probably won't go up by a lot. No one really saw them going up this aggressively. But I thought to myself, there's no way they're going to go up by a lot. But even if they do, I have a $50,000 buffer. But then what ended up happening in September, when September came, is the banks were using appraisals because this was an assignment sale. It was a new building. So the banks didn't really have any other buildings to use for appraisals. So the banks just picked 3 random buildings, and then they came back and they shorted our appraisal by $50,000. So I called the lender I called the broker to get me in touch with the lender. And could you mute your lines? There's someone there that's Senior, can you mute your line, please? Thank you. So essentially what ended up happening was my client, long story short, needed to come up with $50,000 in addition out of pocket, or else we weren't able to close. So we were delayed on the closing. But I fought the bank, I fought the broker, I fought the appraiser. I sent them comps that they should use. And I did a couple of deals in that building. And it's crazy because one unit, the exact same product, closed. They got their financing a month earlier, and they got appraised at 690,000. But then a month later, a new appraisal came in at 600,000. So the banks are all over the place with appraisals, and you're going to have a lot of panic that's going to be happening with individuals that refinance their homes at a very, very high amount. And maybe they use that equity to buy a pre-construction. And now they are high on their primary residence because they've refinanced it, so their costs are high. But now also they might not even get the appraisal in this pre-construction that they also bought, because the bank can't find a comparable to justify giving you $1.3 million, for a townhouse in Milton, where houses detached right now in Milton resell are selling for 1.3 million. So if you bought a townhouse 2 years ago for 1.3 million, you're not going to get financing. Like it's not going to happen. So your options are going to be very, very limited, and they're going to be very restricted. Number one, you're going to have to walk away from the property. Number two, you're going to have to find some idiot who's going to want to buy it on assignment for maybe $1.3 million, which is your purchase price. So you're not going to make a profit, but at least you'll get your principal back, and you can maybe live to fight another day. Or the third option, which I think is the option that makes the most sense, is you might have to sell your primary residence. Hopefully there's still some equity in there, move into the investment property and take the equity from the primary residence and move it into the investment property. So I'm starting to have a lot of those conversations at the moment with individuals that bought, and they didn't buy these pre-cons with me because I would have told them never buy it. But whoever they bought it through, sold them a pre-con. They were excited about it when rates were low and money was free. And now, rates are up and appraisals are very, very low. So a lot of people are going to be, there's going to be a lot of panic in the market, 100% over the next 6 to 18 months, once these products start to close. So a lot of people are going to have to go private. But even if they go private, if the appraisal is not there, they're still not going to get funded. So it's going to be a challenging period over the next little while. Any questions, comments on that before I move on? I know I kind of threw out a whole lot in a short period of time. No? Okay. Okay, so let's move on. So where is affordability? Where is affordability? So this is the income you need to make to be able to afford real estate in around the 416 and the 905 area. So if you are looking for, let's start with a condo. Average price, $739,000. Household income needed, $150,000, let's call it. Not bad. Now, what does that look like for a monthly mortgage payment? And I'm assuming here the down payment is, I'm assuming here that the down payment is 20%. But I mean, you guys can open up a mortgage calculator and you guys can punch in the numbers with an average variable rate of 5.25%, let's say. So, the carrying costs on this, and this is the rates before the last hike. So $3,500, throw in another $400 for maintenance fee. Actually, throw in another $500 for maintenance fee. $739,000. Most likely maintenance fees at least $500. Property taxes, let's throw in $180. So you're looking at about a $4,200 a month minimum carrying cost to get into today's market. So this is the, this is the elephant in the room that people are fighting against and restricting against, and this is why they don't want to get into the market, is because they're saying, man, to get into a 1-bedroom condo or whatever it is for $4,000 a month, I rather wait for rates to come down, but if rates come down, prices are going to go back up. Prices go back up, it's going to be a seller's market again, and then you're not going to be able to compete, and you're going to be losing out on bidding wars, and then you're going to have to go in with no contingencies and no financing clause, and then you're still at risk of appraisals. So, the thinking that individuals have in their head a lot of times doesn't make sense. If you have the means and if you have the capital and you have a 3 to 5 year thinking in terms of purchasing real estate, this is the time to do it. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's called a buyer's market for a reason. This is the market where buyers have the advantage, because once we kind of get back to normal, I mean, it's gonna be crazy again, because money's gonna be cheap, people are gonna be excited, and you're gonna see prices just, the people that already own products, they're gonna be excited. But people that are trying to get into products, they're gonna be more depressed in 6 months than they are right now. And that's just my personal opinion. So if you look at the difference, if we start going into single family detached at 1.4 million, you need almost $300,000 in income. And your carrying cost is $6,700 a month, plus property taxes, and there's a real monthly upkeep to owning a house. It might not show up in the form of a podal, a parcel of tied land, where you kind of you pay $200 a month. Someone takes care of your landscaping and your snow removal and so forth. But in my estimation, the minimum cost to own a single family detached at 1.4 million, your minimum carrying cost is $7,500 a month. Like, bar none, $7,500 a month needs to come out of your pocket every 30 days to be able to maintain it. Now, why would someone still do that? Well, because this 1.4 million in the beginning of the year was probably 1.8, right? And we know that what goes up will come down, but what goes down won't stay down. So that 1.8 will come back. Will it come back next year? Probably not. Will it come back over the next 3 to 5 years? 100%. So would it make sense to bite the bullet on cash flow to be able to realize $300,000 to $400,000 in the near future? That depends, right? It depends on your buyer, depends on your ability to communicate. It depends on where they are in your life, what their needs are, what their goals are. But this is why you need to have these conversations. Anybody have a comment on this? Disagree with this? Think it's more? Think it's less? Okay. All right. Let's move on. So, conversations I would be having. So, number one, conversations with landlords. As I mentioned, this is a time to increase the rents, and it is legal. After November 15, 2018, there is no limit on how much rent you can ask from tenants. Now, I'm a tenant as well. So I'm a tenant as well, and I'm a landlord as well. So does this hurt? Yes. What would I advise you if you want to be strategic and you're renting out and you're servicing tenants? Don't move your tenants into a building that's built after 2018, after November 15, 2018. If you want to protect your tenants more so, you should be asking these types of questions when you're prospecting and you're talking to your and you're talking to agents that represent landlords. Because here's what's going to happen. In 12 months, that tenant is going to call you and they're going to say, hey, I just got this notice for a rent increase, and the rent increase is like 15 to 20%. Michael, didn't you say that this building had rent control for only 1 to 2% a year? And they could fault you for that. So need to be aware of this date here, November 15, 2018, because that will change potentially, if a tenant wants to get them stay at that residence or not. As a landlord, go for it. I mean, why not? Conversation I'll also start having with landlords, because now we're starting to see a little bit of layoffs happening, and most investors don't, most investors kind of just wing their way through this, right? Like real estate is yes, it can create wealth, but it can destroy wealth as well if you don't take the right steps. Like I've seen wealth erode from individuals, in real estate that just don't have the right disciplines. So, one of the most basic things that I ever learned, once when I started looking into being a real estate investor, maybe 15 years ago, I went to like Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar, and the guy, and I didn't pay for the course that happened after, but I'll never forget, the guy said, always have 3 to 6 months buffer because anything could happen. And there's a lot of landlords today that don't have that buffer, because if we do go into a recession, your tenants could lose their jobs. You also have, I've seen situations where the CRA freezes bank accounts, and then that person does not have access to funds. You do have professional tenants out there as well. And unfortunately, right now, if you have a hearing date with a landlord and tenant board, the earliest you're going to get a hearing right now is probably August 2023. If you have an issue today with a tenant, your earliest hearing is August 2023. So it's important to have those buffers and to communicate the importance of having those buffers with landlords. So these are conversations that are important to have. Now, also with landlords, there's a lot of new landlords as well that are trying to sell their properties. It's not selling because of the market, so they're converting it into rentals for the interim, right? So there's a lot of new landlords in the market that, there's an opportunity there as well. I have a property management company, so I manage properties for landlords as well, including mine and my family's as well. But I've built a business outside of, I've built a business on managing properties, because a lot of people just are very amateurish about their dealings with tenants, or they probably don't have the time, or they don't live in the country. So you can also build a business around this small little area right here that can help you, subsidize your costs, build cash flow, and especially in these types of markets that we're potentially going into as well. Conversations with investors that I would start to have is to be on the lookout for assignment sales. There's going to be, at the moment, I have, and I'm sure there's a few people here as well that have some assignments that are either in their pipelines or that are about to trickle in their pipelines. There is going to be a lot of people dumping assignment sales, because a lot of people, they maybe heard a story. Hey, I heard of this guy or this girl. His name is Sonny. I heard he bought a condo 5 years ago. He did nothing, and then he flipped his contract, made $300,000. I want to be like Sonny. So there's a lot of conversations that have happened like that in the GTA over the last 5 to 10 years of individuals that have realized a lot of profits from essentially doing nothing. Like it's when you're a real estate investor and your model is, buying pre-constructions and flipping assignment contracts, there's no risk to you. Like all the risk is on the developer's end. The developer is taking on the development risk. They're taking on, because if they don't get zoning, if they don't get site plan, they don't get permits, then the project is done. They're taking on the sales risk. If they don't hit that threshold of the minimum amount of sales that they need to hit, then the project is done. Then you have construction risk. And with construction risk, you have labor, you have trades, you have everybody going on strike right now, because essentially they're saying, we want the government to print more money so that we can make more money, so that we can add to inflation. Now, I get it. When your job or your livelihood and your family's livelihood is on the line, you don't care about the macro of everything. You just care about what's going on in your own household. So, we just saw teachers went on strike. We just saw Go Transit went on strike. We just, a few months ago, trades went on strike. So all these strikes are essentially creating and causing inflation to prolong, which is also going to cause interest rates to stay high. So all these variables and all these things that are happening are going to contribute in a negative or positive way, even though a lot of people are just maybe thinking for their own pockets or they're just thinking short term. But you're going to see a lot of opportunities in assignment sales. A ton of opportunities in assignment sales. So be on the lookout for those. Chris Hewitt shared something with me earlier in the year. If you go on MLS and you add the bar of taxes and you put the maximum tax amount to $0, you will see all the list of assignments pop up. So if you are doing a regular MLS search, you go to the taxes column, you have to manually add, and you put the maximum to $0, you'll see all the property taxes. You'll see all the assignment sales in your area or that area that you're looking for also come out. Selling primary residences. So I've started having conversations with individuals that are investors that bought products that didn't make sense. And now I'm having conversations with them that, hey, you're going to have to sell this property or refinance this. It's important to, you don't need to be a mortgage broker. I know Omar here has his mortgage license, but it's very important to understand the money aspect of our business. Like I understand everybody likes AGTV and that kind of branding around AGTV, going and picking colors and designs, and you're interested in, I know a lot of people are interested in construction and so forth. I'm interested in my real estate business. I'm interested in the finance. I think the finance is the most important thing. My main interest in real estate is the finance of it, because people don't buy houses, people buy payments. So understanding what those payments look like is very, very important for people making decisions in terms of how they participate, and also if they participate in it and if they make a purchase or not. Anybody want to add anything to that? Or also, I would like to know, what kind of conversations are you guys having with your potential buyers, sellers, landlords, fence sitters? What's the conversations that you guys are having that are maybe a roadblock to helping people get there? And is this helpful to kind of help you bridge that as well? I'm going to start picking on people. Let's start with Ryan Dehaney.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, what question, what conversations am I having with investors?
What conversations are you having with buyers, sellers, investors, landlords, to kind of gear them into this cycle and this season that we had? So I know you have a live listen at the moment, right?
It's sold now.
Oh, sold now. Okay.
Sold now, yeah. Thank you. So I have two buyers who want to purchase, and it's like you said, people buy payments, so they're having a hard time sort of conceptualizing that payment that they're going to have to pay. And I sort of tried to reassure them that, hey, we don't know where interest rates are going to go. Nobody's a fortune teller. No one has the answer. But we've noticed that the increase in the hike looks like it may be slowing. And if it does slow or there's a reversal, the housing market's going to be on fire again. So buy what you can afford now, and don't lock in you don't want to lock in at 8% or 6% for 5 years, and just be able to ride the wave. And at some point it'll come down, you'll be able to refinance, and it'll become much more affordable. So it's sort of, I've just noticed they want the guidance. They just think that interest rates are going to take them out of the game and they'll never be able to afford. And it's just sort of, reassuring them that, hey, you can do this, buy what you can afford, and, and don't. I find that most people, if they're approved for 700, they want to buy 750.
Yeah.
Well, so
if they're approved for 700, they want to buy 750. How's that?
Well, what I mean is they always want more than they could actually, they always want the maximum, right? They always want to buy right at the limit. Like you had a client where they were approved for 7 and you said, hey, let's stick to 650.
Yes.
And I find most people, that's a smart person who's able to look forward. A lot of people I'm dealing with, they don't want to do that. They want, let's go to 701 if we can, you know?
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
If they're approved for 700 and you get them into a purchase for 720.
Right.
So how do you guys close?
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is
Well, I mean,
it's the mindset.
okay. Well,
It's
I
just the
mean,
mindset.
well,
It's just the mindset.
if it's a mindset, then it's you as the realtor, you need to bring those expectations.
Yeah.
It's not even expectations. You need to just put the reality check on them. So, for
Yeah.
example, like I don't look at properties over people's pre-approvals amount unless I know that I can negotiate it down. So I'll be looking at $750,000 products, but before I even go and jump in my car to go look at those products, I'm having a conversation with the realtor, with the selling agent. Hey, I have clients, great clients, pre-qualified. Top of our budget is 700. You know, I know you've been listening to the market. You started at 800,000 beginning of the year. You've come down to 770. You're now down to 750. We know interest rates are going up again, and we know individuals that need to potentially sell need to do it fast because more competition is coming and more interest rates hike are coming. Are you open to having a solid deal at 700,000? And I also check Geo Warehouse all the time to see what they bought it for.
Right.
That way I know, okay, you know what? I mean, if they bought it for 690, then they're obviously not going to negotiate with me for 700,000. But if they bought it for 300,000, you know, I mean,
There's room.
there's definitely room. And also you might not get this opportunity again for a couple of years. Like who knows? Rates could continue going up. Rates could go up to 10%. Like nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows where this is going.
Yeah,
If China goes to
absolutely.
war with Taiwan tomorrow, it's game over, right? There's so many variables and so many unknowns. So I always tell people 2 things. Number one, especially when it comes to finances and mortgages, I'm not a mortgage broker, but I can connect you with a mortgage broker or a team of mortgage brokers or the team that I like to use because these guys, you know, I've worked with them long enough or, you know, and they know how to get the job done. So that's my expectation number 1 that I always have. My expectation number 2 that I always have is I always tell people what I tell you is only good for 60 days. So if I tell you that this is the strategy, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it, and we don't do it in the next 60 days, that strategy of what I said is null and void. It does not, you can't apply it in 90 days. And then if it goes right or if it goes wrong, then I'll be held accountable. Because sometimes they might not use you for that strategy. Maybe, you know, the client's brother-in-law is a realtor and, you know, it's going to be a problem at Christmas dinner if they don't use them, right? So they're going to come to you for advice, but they're going to go to them for the service, right? I'm sure it's
Absolutely. Absolutely happened to me.
happened to, right? Okay,
Yep.
so with that being said, whatever advice that I give you is only good for 60 days. After 60 days, you know, you need to call me back and say, hey, you know, you said that we should sell this property or do this at this time. Is that still true? Because I mean, look how much things have changed 60 days ago till now, and 60 days before that till the last 60-day period. So things are changing so fast that whatever your advice or whatever consultations you're doing with individuals, you need to just let them know this is only good. And maybe even say only good for 30 days. That way they have to get on the phone with you right away, right? Whatever that is for you, you need to figure that out. But A, consult with a professional, especially with tax related and mortgage related questions. And B, whatever advice that I give you as a professional realtor is only good for 30 to 60 days. And then it's null and void.
Yeah, I had that conversation right before this call. But I do have a question though.
Okay.
I think OFSI is going to make an announcement on December 15th about the minimum qualifying rate for uninsured mortgages.
Sorry, who?
OFSI, Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions.
Okay.
So like the mortgage stuff. I'm just wondering, does anyone know sort of what may be coming?
Well, Omar might be able to drop some insight. Is he still on the call? No, he's not on the call. Well, I mean, whatever's coming is going to be front page news, you know, because Canadians love real estate like Americans love the stock market. You know, Canadians we participate in the stock market as well, but not to the degree in terms of how we participate and discuss and have conversations about real estate. So real estate is going to be a headliner all the time for whatever new policy comes and gets introduced. So you'll definitely be privy to it. And also, I try not to also get, like, I have a pretty good knowledge base when it comes to the mortgage side of things. I'm not a mortgage broker, of course, but I don't make myself the mortgage expert. So I have a lot of clients that, you know, they'll just call me all the time about mortgage related items. And I try to, even though I do know the answer, or I could advise with the answer, I always want to push them to talk to a mortgage professional because it's important for them to get those steps rolling. It's important for them to start submitting their documents because that's going to show me and tell me where people are in the sales cycle. You know, anybody that doesn't have their papers or they're reluctant to sit with a mortgage professional, I just put them on a list where I'll get back to you when I have the time. You know, but don't get into the, you know, deep dive, even like zoning bylaws. I mean, zoning bylaws, there's really no other place you can go to really learn. So you as the realtor, you need to become the professional in that aspect, in that market. But try to have the knowledge, but try to, where you can, push people to sit down with their, you know, with a professional, especially with finance related stuff and tax related stuff as well.
Right. Understood. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, Omar here. Sorry, I didn't get back to you guys
Oh,
this week. Yeah,
no problem.
but just to add to that, I heard some rumblings and about OFSI looking at maybe making the stress the stress test and making it more affordable, right? And I've also heard rumblings that they might extend the amortization, so maybe introducing a 50-year amortization to some products as well. So it's
50
yeah, 50, yeah. So I mean, the stress test will help, like in maybe abolishing that plus 2% will probably help, but that 50 years is probably what a lot of people are looking forward to, just because, I mean, it will lower the monthly obligation, right? And obviously help people, because we're looking at interest rates probably climbing up to that 6%, 7%, like you said, Mike, earlier, and it's going to be an interesting market then.
And you know what? I mean, 20 years ago, amortizations were up to 40 years, right? But they wanted to control prices, so they've shrunk the amortization period. But man, you know, the funny thing is when you translate what a mortgage means, mort means death, gauge means cage. So for 50 years, you're going to be in a death cage for real. Like for real, 50 years. Damn. Hey,
Yeah.
Whatever helps with the payments, right?
Whatever helps with the payments is what they're trying to aim for. I mean,
I'm game for 50 years. I'm in this to play the lifetime game. So hey, bring on 50 years. Bring on 100 years. Why not? Bring on 100 years.
When is this assignment scheduled to drop?
Sorry, what was that?
The announcement from OSFI. When is that? When are we expecting that?
I'm not completely sure, but
It was it was December 15th.
You did say that December 15th, yeah.
December
December.
15th? Okay, thanks.
Well, you know what, guys, truth be told, I would rather, you know what, the longer the better, because anybody can sell real estate with a 50-year amortization. You know, it's not hard to sell real estate with a 50-year amortization. What you want to do, as in especially in times like in times like these are where you really separate yourself from the masses. Because a 50-year amortization is going to encourage more people to come into the industry, it's going to encourage more people to create it's going to create more of a buyer frenzy, it's going to create more of a seller's market, and it's going to, at the end of the day, it's going to be more or less the same. You get a lot of frustrated buyers, and then you're going to get a lot of sellers saying, well, we don't need you because this thing sells itself. So even though it sounds good, but you want to be able to sell real estate in any type of market, whether the rates are high, whether the amortization is low, whether the policies are favorable or unfavorable. There's a ton of opportunities out there. You just have to source what the right motivation is. And that's part of the conversation we need to be having with buyers. It's to source what their main, because the main challenge of this market is nobody's going to move or do anything unless the motivation is strong, right? So what you want to do is in your conversations is finding out who has the motivation that matches, the type of action that can be taken. And we see that in steps. Who's going to get pre-approved when you're telling them to kind of see what that number is. I had a client, we started looking at properties in August, told her to go get a pre-approval. She got a pre-approval. She felt the money was short. So she went back home to her home country in Kenya to convince her parents to give her another $150,000 to come back into the Toronto market and to be able to buy real estate. That is a person who has the right motivation, right? So you need to have conversations with individuals that have the right motivation to want to take. But if everything is like just, everybody wants to wait and see and get a deal, whatever that means, in their minds. I'm excited for 50-year amortization as an investor. I'm not excited about 50-year amortizations potentially coming as a real estate agent, because it doesn't do anything for me in the sense of building my skills and separating me from the pack. Does that make sense? So we can't let external forces determine the course of our businesses. So I also don't want people to kind of be on this call to be like, okay, well, December, I'm just going to wait until December and see what is announced. And then in the new year, I'm going to start talking to people about 50-year amortization, recession coming, so rates will go down. You don't want to, or you'll just never make money. The government always lies to some degree about what they're going to do. So just have more importantly to building your skills, building your mindset, getting around people there are people that there are real estate agents that I've talked to that this has been their best period. Now, most of it started the first 6 months of the year, but they still have created enough momentum and enough leads and enough activity to be able to sustain themselves for the rest of the year. I think it was the first time I've heard realtors making $5 million a year in the GTA. I've never heard of, prior to that, if a real, 10 years ago, maybe there was a few making, $500,000, maybe up to $1 million, but today, like I'm having conversations with realtors that are doing $1 million, $2 million, $5 million a year, in real estate, because the purchase prices have increased, but also, they have strategies that they have the right mindset where in any market they're able to sell, and they have a mix of types of products that you can sell. You can sell resell. You can, I was looking at some of the numbers that individuals were doing in the brokerage, and I'm seeing some people are doing in rentals, just in leases alone, what maybe some agents 8 years ago were doing in selling condos and houses. So I'm seeing selling condos and houses, or condos 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the commissions were $2,000 to $3,000. Today I'm seeing lease agreement commissions that are $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 a month. $4,000 in commissions being paid out. So you can build a very strong rental business as well and be able to sustain. If you're doing a rental a week, an average rental cost of $3,000, that's $1,500 a week. That's $6,000 a month. That's $72,000 a year just off of one rental a week. So the numbers have grown drastically in the market, so the opportunities have grown and the commission checks have also grown as well, right? So there's conversations to be had. Another thing you should be having besides finding out the motivation is, especially when people tell me that they want a cash flow, I say, okay, cool. Well, let's increase your down payment. Are you cool with 30%? 30% down payment will help you cash flow if that's what your main goal is, right? Can we borrow money from someone? Mom and dad never did anything with their properties during this market explosion. They're probably sitting on $1 million in equity. Can we have a conversation with me, you, and your parents to see how we can tap into, connect them with someone like Omar to see how we can tap into $250,000 of equity from their property to help you with a down payment on your property? These are conversations you need to have with, especially if your market is under, which most of us are, your market is under, I'll say even under the age of 40. There's a lot of 40-year-olds right now that don't own properties because they've been renting for so long and they've been trying to time the market, and now they're confused as to what to do. But there's a lot of equity. There's hundreds of billions of dollars in the Canadian economy in people's homes that they never touched and they never did anything with during COVID. So this is the time to start engaging in those conversations and increase the down payment so the cash flow is better. And then when the market comes back, you can refinance with lower interest rate and be able to pay back mom and dad as well. That's the conversations that need to be had right now. And make sure that purchase is a 3 to 5 year long-term. Don't entertain individuals that want to buy a property and they want to assign it in 6 months, because they're just in for a disaster, and it's going to end up being headaches for you as well. Questions, comments on that before we move on? Okay, so projects right now, I just want to talk about not particularly these two projects. I just picked these two projects because I like the terms of them in terms of what I saw, but in terms of pre-construction right now, it's a very interesting time because, just how realtors are complaining, developers are complaining. So you have small developers complaining because they can't compete for land against medium-sized developers. Medium-sized developers are complaining because they can't compete for land with with developers that have institutional backing. So, Mattamy, for example, is an example of a developer that is sitting on tens of thousands of acres across the GTA and just waiting for the right time to release projects and to release products. What that does for a developer like Mattamy is it puts them at an advantage because their cost of land is essentially peanuts, right? They just have to worry about what the hard costs are and the soft costs are, but the land cost is not part of the equation because they've maybe been sitting on it for 10, 20, 30 years. Parkland and Lakeshore, for example, is an example of land that Mattamy's had for a very, very, very long time that, over the last 10 to 15 years, they sold to other developers and they allowed it to be developed, right? So with developers such as this, they have an incentive to price it accordingly. Whereas most pre-construction projects that you'll take a look at, it's priced with a little bit of speculation. It's got a little bit of forecasting in there. If you're buying, I believe the last meeting we had, what's his name? Blake Robinson came in from RDS, and he was telling us about projects he was selling downtown for $2,000 a square foot, right? Well, of course, they have to sell it at $2,000 a square foot because they bought the land at a ridiculously high amount. Costs are ridiculously high. So the only way to make a profit is to be able to sell it at these record numbers, that maybe by the time they're built, like who knows if it'll even get appraised at those numbers, right? So there's a little bit of risk there. And if somebody's playing a very long game, that is fine. If they're not, it's important to really source some of these projects. So these two projects I like, both by Mattamy. Milan Creek is in, where's Milan Creek? Milan Creek is in Milton, and then West Bend is in High Park. High Park is one of my favorite areas in Toronto. And for other developers that I've seen in High Park, they're pricing at about $1,400 to $1,600 a square foot. The last time I checked, I mean, I haven't checked recently, but Matamese is at about $1,200 a square foot. Malin Creek, when I was looking at the prices, it was roughly at $1,000 a square foot in Milton. And I was shocked by this because I was like, resale is close to $1,000 a square foot. So you're pretty much buying pre-con at today's market value with another 2 to 3 years of appreciation because it's priced with good terms. The fundamentals make sense, and the type of strategy, especially that we use here in Dreammaker, also this will fit. And then the deposits are also really good, up to 80,000 plus in incentives. Sometimes you can, we can negotiate these incentives so it becomes a kickback back to the realtors. Because if your client doesn't want 80,000 in incentives, you can roll it back into your commission depending on the developer. So some developers will allow you to do this. I've had developers say, here, Mike, here's $100,000 in incentives. You decide how much you kick back to your clients and how much you keep for commissions. But here's $100,000 total in incentives. So when you're going through the different developments that maybe come across your emails, make sure you're reading the terms. As we established earlier today, a lot of people buy terms, they buy payments. They don't necessarily buy assets. They're buying what the finance part of it is, what the cash flow potential of it is. A lot of people, maybe even on this phone call, have assets that they've never ever seen because they don't care about the property, the view, the location. They just care about, is this thing able to hold and sustain itself? Can this property support itself over the next 3 to 5 years? So understanding the terms are very, very important when you look at a project, and especially when you have deposits being spread out. I mean, you're talking about, this is what, 10%, a 10% deposit structure before occupancy. Like if you're buying something that's $600,000, which I think Malin Creek has, I think their prices start in the high 500s. But even if you're buying something, let's say with parking, and parking is free, which is a $60,000 value. So if you take a 1-bedroom condo, I believe Matamese is selling it for $580,000. You need $58,000 in deposits, right? You need $58,000 in deposits, plus they're throwing parking for free, which is a $60,000 value. You're putting $58,000 and you're getting $60,000 back in forms of parking. You've already done 100% of your capital. Does that make sense? Just in terms of parking being free, you've done 100% of your capital just because parking is structured to be free. So what I've done and what I've had some clients do in the past is when parking is free after closing, I'll sever the parking from the unit and put them on 2 separate deeds. And then I'll sell the parking for cash, 50,000 in cash, and now I have my deposit back in hand. So I put $50,000 down. I got $50,000 in free parking. I split them, put them on 2 different deeds, and now I have $50,000 kicked back to me because I can sell the parking for cash, right? There's so many different things that you can do in terms of structures and incentives, but reading those incentive packages are very, 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 very important to be able to see what the opportunities are. West Bend I spoke about, again, similar terms with the occupancy, and also some of these have zero, some of these have $0 in development charges. So think about that again. If you're buying something that's pre-construction, even if the value is good, so let's take downtown Toronto. Let's take the project that I shared, $2,000 a square foot, which was CeLo. I believe, yeah, CeLo was $2,000 a square foot. So if you have 500 square feet at $2,000 a square foot, that's $1 million for 500. That's $1 million purchase for 500 square feet at CeLo. CeLo's located at Spadina and Bloor, right? So if you have $1 million purchase for a 1-bedroom, because it's 500 square feet, most likely it's a 1-bedroom, your closing costs on that is probably going to be, you have to factor in double land transfer. which is probably gonna cost you about $40,000. You have to factor in development charges, parks and levies, Tarion, and bunch of miscellaneous items, which will probably cost you about another $30,000. So you have about $70,000 right there in closing costs. Then you got to factor in, well, is this an investment property? Probably have to pay HST, $24,000 minimum, right? So now you're at $100,000, close to $100,000 in closing costs. So closing costs are a big deal in terms of when you're buying pre-construction, right? People don't factor that in, even with, especially when they want to do assignments. It's like, okay, well, this person needs to come up with another $100,000 in addition to their deposits before they can get a mortgage. That's a deal breaker for a lot of people. So where's that $100,000 going to come from? In this case, Matabele's saying there's no development charges, $0. So again, that's another $30,000 to $40,000 that is a kickback plus free parking of another $60,000. That's $100,000 that you're going to make on signing. That's how I have conversations with investors. That's how I get people over the line. That's how seasoned real estate agents, seasoned investors, these are the kind of things that they want to see. They want to see that they're getting a deal. They want to see that the terms are good. And, so if you have a project that you're interested in and you're maybe, you're not too sure about the terms, definitely send it to me and we can definitely take a look at it as well. So besides that, go out, find those projects, look at those term sheets. There's still great opportunities. I know people start to kind of get in holiday mode right after Halloween. You can still, what I would encourage everyone to do, use this time period, obviously, get around loved ones, friends and family, but also, build your business, start building your businesses today for Q1 next year, because the interest rates are not slowing down, and anything else that gets rolled out will just be a bonus. If 50-year amortization comes or 40-year amortization comes, or they start to do incentives for first-time home buyers. They've been talking about that for a long time. All those are just gravy, but don't let the external factors determine when you should go out there and be going out there to build your businesses. So that is it. This is going to be a recorded call. I know there were some points there that probably some of you might need to hear again. Go log into the login. I can't remember exactly what a login is, but reach out to Natasha. She'll share that with you. Log in, revisit these videos, take them again. If there's any particular topics that anybody wants to see or a range of topics people want me to maybe go over and discuss in the new year, definitely let me know and I can start putting things together because I want to start preparing some of the trainings for 2023 right now. Other than that, we have a tentative date, first week of December, for our end of season holiday event, Christmas event. So look out for that. That is going to be, we're going to be sending the emails over, I believe we should be sending by end of next week. We should have the details confirmed because I know everybody gets really, really busy around this time of year. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the weekend. I mean, it's November and we got sunshine outside, so utilize it as much as you can before the snow comes. Other than that, have a good day, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the training. We'll talk to you soon. Oh, we got messages in the chats. Hold on. Oh, congratulations, baby number 2. Woohoo! Thank you. Asha went to Accra Condos, was told they would have this inclusionary zoning. I didn't really understand how that would work. Asha, are you comfortable with inclusionary zoning now? Or you want me to talk a little? Oh, she's gone. Okay. So just reading the messages here. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, sweet. Okay, everyone, take care.